Welcome to World Heritage Rookies, the podcast where we explore UNESCO World Heritage sites one episode at a time. We are Lina
and Ralph, and we will travel alongside you to some of the most stunning sites our world has to offer.
Each week, we dive into the history, fun facts, and reasons why World Heritage sites matter for humanity, sharing our own discoveries and travel tips along the way.
So, let's dive in and learn about some World Heritage together. Hello and welcome everybody to the fourth episode of World Heritage Rookies, the podcast where we talk about World Heritage sites one site at a time. If you've already listened to the past three episodes, very happy to see you back. My name is Ralph and I'm here with
Lina. And if you are new, welcome. As Ralph said, we talk about tips and things that are all World Heritage sites related. So happy to have you here. I hope it's interesting for you. And today we are actually having a really nice episode, a really interesting one, because it's about the second thing that men think the most, which is Vikings.
What's the first thing then?
The Roman Empire.
Yeah. True. Yeah, I can confirm it. I definitely think more often about the Roman Empire than the Vikings. Yes.
Yeah, but it's the second. It's still in the top 5, let's say.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So before starting, of course, our episode today is about aux Meadows National Historic Site. But before starting, I want to apologize to our French-speaking audience because my French is absolutely not existent.
I think both of our French is not the best one. And I theoretically should be able to speak a little bit of French because I had it for 4 years in high school. But, well, I think we saw in Morocco that I'm not really able to speak properly French anymore, right?
Yeah, no, it is really sad. We were trying to buy bananas in a local store, and it was the most weird interaction I ever had.
But anyway, we're not here to talk about my failure of being able to speak French. Just that you know, we apologize for any kind of pronunciation errors that happen in French.
And in English.
But mostly in French, I think, in this episode. And but we're mostly here to talk about aux Meadows, right?
Yes. So before starting, as always, Ral, did you know anything about aux Meadows?
To be honest, just what I learned about in the preparation for our overall schedule of episodes. So I know it's a World Heritage site in Canada. I knew, and also what you just said, it's related to the Vikings. But apart from that, not that much, to be honest. So not really. Is it just a place? Are there any kind of structures or buildings or stuff around? So the more specific importance and reason why it's a World Heritage, no, I do not know.
Well, you will learn this episode.
Thank you.
But anyway, so this isn't just any archaeological site. It's the only confirmed site where Vikings from Europe came to North America long before Columbus outside of Greenland. This is, of course, a place, as we mentioned, in Canada, in the northern tip of Canada. And it's a really famous place because, as I mentioned it's the only confirmed places here in the Americas.
So that means we might not know that there are more around, but they have I guess there might be somewhere it's suspected, but that's the only one they know for sure.
I don't know if there is any other suspected site, but probably. That's the fact that is the materials that Viking use were a lot of wood and a lot of things that corrode with time.
Yeah,
so
true.
I will specify why this site kind of was preserved, but it is a possibility. Now, there is also, as I think that we mentioned it out of the recording, that they are always finding things. Archaeological studies today are in booming, so maybe tomorrow's information is going to be different.
Probably, yeah.
So, a little bit of history. Long before the Vikings arrived, the site was home of at least 5 indigenous groups, the oldest one dating back around 6,000 years. The most prominent occupation was by the Dorset people, which lived around 300 years before the Vikings arrived. So it is suspected that they never had any kind of interaction. The people that came to Lonesome Meadow were actually the Norse tribe of the Vikings, one of the most famous one. And these Norse tribal arrived around the year 1000 CE or Common or Current Era. This was confirmed by carbon dating, but also most precisely by tree ring dating. And the site was appointed in 1021 to be the year when the Norse activity actually started.
So with tree ring dating, you mean they took the wooden materials or stuff that they found there, and they were then like, so we're talking about tree ring dating, like you count the rings of the trees to know how old they are.
Exactly. Because they found the buildings, of course, were not made in cement or like in any kind of stone. I mean, Vikings used wood and ironsmith as their primary materials. So they took samples from this wood that was the remainings of each of the buildings, and they count the rings.
That's really fascinating. Still, like all the ways you can use today in order to identify the age of something.
I know. And the interesting part is that they can exactly point out the year they came, which I found extremely interesting.
Yes, really precise. You said, like, what was it, 1021?
1021 CE.
Super specific, okay.
8 buildings were found. Each of the buildings, I mean, just for reference, they were named from A to H, so A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, just for reference, but they were exactly looking like Viking homes in Greenland and Iceland. These buildings were not only homes or anything like that, they were workshops and dwellings. The biggest one, it's believed it was the ironsmith. And why it was believed that it was the ironsmith? Because in these specific remainings they were found between 100 and 200 nails.
Like iron, okay, like
iron nails.
They just found a bunch of iron nails. They're like, okay, yep, that has to be a smithy.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, sort of makes sense. You make iron nails in a smithy.
Exactly. And of course, they found also other tools for this ironsmith. There is also one workshop exclusively for carpentry, where it's believed that they not only repair wooden things, but also boats. So
Vikings and boats, yeah, okay, makes sense, yeah.
A little bit about the population, the activities, and the duration they were in this settlement. Well, the exactly population is unknown. Nevertheless, the 8 buildings could fit around 160 people at a time. It was likely not a permanent village. Nevertheless, this is a huge debate today because some archaeologists said that it was only used temporarily for about 20 years. But others say that actually not, it was using up to 100 years. So there is still a big debate of if this settlement was permanent or not.
If it was not a permanent village, what would it have been then?
Well, actually, it's said that it was just a site for boat repairs and mainly just a landing zone before they entered a little bit south into Canadian territory.
Is it then close to the sea actually, or?
Yes, actually, it's in exactly the border between, it's in the seaside.
Okay, yeah, okay.
They also found a lot of remains of animals like caribou, bear, wolf, fish, seals, and even whales, which means that basically they stayed here to maybe eat and put in and grab more things they could use for continuing their journeys. They also found a lot of seeds from the south of Canada and the north of the United States, which means that they definitely went south and continued their exploration further south.
And this could then be like, I assume, proving the theory about it just being like a sort of base camp where they would return to from their expeditions, I assume, right?
Exactly. And that's maybe the reason why this debate of if it was a permanent settlement it's happening. Not only that some archaeologists says that the site was used by 20 years and other ones by 100 years. It was also because in 2019, a study suggested that aux Meadows may actually not only have males, which were normal for Vikings exploration, but also female, because they found bone needles and artifacts that only women used in these tribes, which suggested that it was not just a normal explanation the Vikings would do, but a more longer period of time. They were going to stay a longer period of time. Of course, there is also evidence against it, which means they didn't find any burials, any tools for farming, any animal pens or things that could suggest that they keep animals on the site. And also, many of the tools that they found only suggest that there was a temporary base for boat reparation and a station to continue their travels.
Coming a little bit like obviously in the area where we're not at all qualified to say it, but since you did the majority of the research, what do you think? Do you think it has been a permanent settlement, or do you more incline to the theory that it was really just a base camp over the various times?
Well, I think that most likely it was not a permanent settlement. From what I have read and the research that I have done, I think that maybe it was used in longer periods of time. I mean, we know that traveling from Europe, it's a long travel. So which means these travelers came maybe with their families knowing that it was going to be a really long journey. They stay for quite a while, maybe years at a time, but then they continue. So I think that it was in between, right? So it was a kind of permanent settlement for a while, but then they use also just as a stationary because they continue their journeys afterwards. So maybe it could be a compromise, but of course it cannot be proved.
For sure, yeah.
Exactly.
But that's a good theory, I think, because it seems the way you're describing it to me, it is not something that was just there for limited amount of time and then to be forgotten because, well, then we probably wouldn't have found it anymore today. But I assume if it was meant to be like a permanent settlement, then also we might have found more than just like some ruins.
Exactly. And I think that this is a good point because we have to be really clear. There is just the remainings of the buildings. There is one building that was rebuilt for educational purposes and entertaining purposes, but most of the site is covered in grass. So just to understand a little bit and entering a little bit the topic of how it was the discovery, it was basically a grassy mound, and a local man named George Deca found them a little bit weird. Like these little hills are a little bit not normal. So he called two Norwegian archaeological couple, Anne Steen Ingstad and her husband Helge Ingstad, in 1960 to maybe do some exploration, and then they discovered the site. They were in total 7 excavations between 1961 and 1968, where they discovered these 8 buildings and all the Viking artifacts, including bronze fastening pins and tools and so on.
So it's actually quite a recent discovery then, right?
It is quite recent, and the reason why it was undiscovered for so long is because it was pretty much a grass hill, maybe with some weird mini hills inside the hill. So that's why it was discovered. That's why also the idea that maybe more sites are to be discovered in the future is still completely open.
Yeah, you might not know what other ridges or remains lie under grassy hills around.
Exactly. And there is also something interesting. They found completely confirmed 8 buildings, but actually they are possible 9, which means there is one that is still until today not confirmed. That's why most likely they were in conversations with NASA to see if they can use more of this radar kind of analysis, but this is still not confirmed or published. So yeah, basically that's why it's important to mention that for maintaining the site, they recover many of the buildings again with grass so they could be preserved in time. This is in many of the remains are made of wood, as I mentioned at the beginning. So conditions like weather, and we are talking about a really extreme weather of the north of Canada, could actually destroy the site. So they was decided to be many of the remains to be covered again.
That's then something you have to be aware of when you want to visit. It's not probably the most stunning or awe-inspiring site what you can see, but it's important because of its relevance and what it symbolizes, right?
Exactly, but please do not expect to see 8 Viking buildings. Once again, they have many cultural and educational activities. I will mention that in a little bit, but it's still a park, and it's more like a park where you can have outside activities. Fun facts, a little bit entering into the fun facts space. There is a kind of debate, but it's still interesting, connection between aux Meadows and the Vinland Sagas. Ralph, did you know what the Vinland Sagas are?
You mean a part of an anime that we have on our watch list and we still need to watch? No, jokes aside. So I know actually, because of the anime, that it's based on a Vinland Saga, which is, to my knowledge, like a collection of tales from, I'm not sure if it was Iceland or Greenland.
It was Greenland. And yes, indeed, these sagas tell stories about the Norse tribe explorers from Greenland, where they found a new land in the west called Vinland. Basically, that's the whole story. And it is believed by many that aux Meadows is linked to these stories. There are 2 stories where this Vinland is mentioned. The first one is the saga of the Greenlanders, which maybe we need to watch the anime to see if they are separated. And the second one is the saga of Eric the Red. And in these sagas, as I mentioned before, they mentioned that they found a new land in the west, and they call it Vinland. And this Vinland that they basically mentioned could be actually Canada. What is interesting is that they even mention also aux Meadows specific. There are 2 settlements that they mention in these Vinland Sagas. The first one, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced it, is Laisbudir, and the other one is Hope. So they are actually naming the places, and they mention 2. So, I mean, of course, this is highly debated by historic people and archaeologists. So maybe it's a big take, but what an interesting thing, right?
I think that is also one good example why the both of us could never be archaeologists or historians, because we would be like, oh, it must mean this. We would already jump to conclusions and probably say like, oh yeah, aux Meadows has been mentioned in the Vinland Saga. So
yes, it's a big take. It's a big take, and you have to be really careful in the educational community to say these kind of things, because it's impossible to prove.
Yeah, to be pragmatic and just really look at what is the evidence and what can you put there. We would be too excitable, I assume. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't think we could be we couldn't be able to work in the academia. I think we are too jumpy, let's say. Some information that is really interesting about these sagas. These sagas mention fights between the Norse tribe and the local indigenous people. And well, it's believed that these conflicts may have caused the Norse tribe to actually leave Vinland, but this is not part of the saga itself. Something also really interesting I found: Vinland means wine land, which of course means that they were wild grapes in the places that they found. And of course, Lonsa Meadow has a lot of grape growing regions around. So this is one of like the pro statements of why the Vinland Sagas may be referring to Canada. But of course, this is also a big take because they are wild grapes in a lot of places. So yeah, this is pretty much one of the most interesting facts. Some other important facts: the name Lonsa Meadow most likely means Grisland Bay in French English, or it could be also Lance Alamede. Oh my goodness, my French, which means Madea Cove, or Lonsa Meadow, referring to meadows in English, which refers to open grassy landscape.
Ah, okay. So the meadow in it could actually be like the English word.
Meadow.
Okay.
So it is a combination between both of them. And I think that is a really appealing thing because we are talking about Canada. Some archaeologists also mentioned that this place could be a hoax because it is, how to say it, a big take that they are Viking, but it is important to understand that the discoveries actually confirms not only that the timing is the same where Vikings were in Greenland and in Iceland, but also the artifacts and the iron pins that they found are pretty much correlated to the ones found in Europe. So the methods of building on and creating these artifacts pretty much was the same.
Do you know what was the reason for some archaeologists to call it a hoax just because like, yeah, no, it cannot be that Vikings were around there, or was there like something, because that seems like a really elaborate hoax, right? To build there any kind of ruins
Yeah,
there.
I mean, it is always the case that I think that archaeologists need to be completely sure, and many think that the things that they found are too subtle to believe that this is a confirmed site. Nevertheless, I would say that it's a ratio of 20-80 between the scholars. But there is some that do not believe that this is a place. The problem is the remains are not greatly. And this was not a city. This was not as I mentioned it before, it is considered not a permanent settlement. So of course there is not as many remains to completely confirm the connection. Nevertheless, the Viking journey to Lonsa Meadow represents what it was called the completion of the cycle of the full circumnavigation of the globe of human history. We know that humans travel from Africa to Asia, then from Asia across Europe, and then with this confirmation also into the Americas. So even before Columbus, this navigation was already completed. So, yeah, exactly. So I think that now we can close the historical part and we go to maybe what we are more interested on, and is why Lonsa Meadow is a World Heritage Site. I think that you have some ideas already, but how many criteria do you think that Lonsa Meadow gets to be a World Heritage Site?
So I think from what you told me, it's clearly going to be a cultural World Heritage Site. So in the beginning, I was not sure, is it natural or is it cultural? But from what you told me, it's clearly a cultural site. I'm going with what I have the feeling is like a sort of a safe bet, and that it's meeting two criteria.
Well, yeah, many sites has two criteria, but unfortunately this one only has one, which is criteria number 6, living traditions and ideas. Lonsa Meadow is linked to important events and beliefs and traditions, including, of course, the spread of Viking culture across the globe. it's not only because, of course, it's the only known Viking site in the Americans, but also because it's the representation of actual people that travel from Europe, or the first people that travel from Europe across the ocean to North America. So this make it especially interested.
Yeah, that's when you think about it by today's standards. Yeah, traveling from Europe to North America, you take an airplane and then you're there within a few hours. But I think what you mentioned, like it has been more than 1,000 years ago that it has happened, and the trip was difficult. Even if they might have started from Iceland or Greenland, that's still like really, really difficult, and you have to account for all the weather conditions. I assume since you mentioned in the north of Canada that it's like really also pretty cold, I would assume, and that you have very harsh weather conditions in there. So it's really what it symbolizes, right? What the achievement in a way, like what humans were capable of doing.
Exactly. And maybe I will come back to this topic about the weather and how harsh the conditions are in Lonesome Meadow. But before of that, I wanted also to mention the recognition that this historical site has. It became a National Historic Site in 1968, and it became a World Heritage Site in 1978 as one of the first ones that Canada has. Also, this site covers around 8,000 hectares, which is about like 31 square miles of land and sea. It's protected, of course, by parts of Canada, as I mentioned before, and the park maintains in good condition all the remaining buildings by, of course, doing studies frequently. And yeah, basically that, as you mentioned, it is really a harsh environment. So the site, it's only open from the 1st of June to the 3rd of October from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. This may change from year to year. So always check the official G site or the official site of the park. The weather, it's cold, rainy and foggy, even in summer. So please dress warmly. And the site not only have the remaining building, they also have other historic programs, including a living history of the Vikings. So you can interact with interpreters and actors on Viking outfits, ask questions. They will do some activities so you can see how blacksmith work in the past, what were their day-to-day activities. Some storytelling is happening. Also, some meets around fire. So it's a really interactive environment. So please plan around 3 hours minimum to stay in the site. There is also, it is a national park. So there is around 3 kilometers of trail. So you can also have a nice hike, seeing the coastal views, which sometimes even can allow you to see icebergs, because, we know that this site is really close to Greenland. So please remember that you can maybe even see icebergs.
I'm curious what you mentioned also here now with the sort of recreation or living experience, because there have now been multiple World Heritage Sites or also areas where we have visited where this is done. What is generally your take on this? I think I never asked you that, but do you think this is something interesting? Do you think this is something fun? Because it's very often the balance that you have to find, that it's like really what is the historical value in it, or is it just like more like of a show or of a fairyland? What do you think about that?
Well, I do think that is sometimes necessary. Maybe our listeners and our audience are really interested in the meaning of these World Heritage Sites, but that's not always the case, especially for families and children. So in order to motivate families and parents to visit this place with their families, they need more activities. And I think the historical part is really there and it's always going to be there, but it's also, it's necessary some educational parts as well. So I think that is necessary. I actually like it a lot, especially when you go to these activities. I think that we did it when we were in Tria. We will mention it when we go to that specific episode. This interactive kind of tour was really interesting. So I think that it is a nice to have. And I know that sometimes massive tourism, it's a problem. But I think that these specific interactive activities are really nice and many times are really well done.
It's definitely true. And like you said, there might be people who are just fascinated by the pure history by itself. But when you are able to get people who might not be just pure history enthusiasts or historians or archaeologists and like get them sort of hooked with the more of a experience, this is then also a good study. I fully agree.
Also, I think that it's, important that this is the most interesting part of why people visit a Viking site, is to know about the Vikings and the fact that you can see how they dress, what they did in their daily lives, what they eat, ask questions, maybe hear some storytelling is really interesting. Even for me, I will happily to see the actors and interpreters, and I would like to do some questions. Another activity that you can do in the park is that they have a museum with all the real artifacts that they were found in many of these excavations.
Also the 100 iron nails.
I don't know if you can find the 100 nails there, but I'm pretty sure some of them. Maybe if we someday get to go, I can make a photo and maybe update you also, guys, to see how many nails actually you can find.
Or if you find it until we're releasing also the notes to this episode on our Instagram at World Heritage Rookies, perhaps we can include a picture or so of the iron nails if we find any of those as a
marketing
material.
time.
Yeah, marketing time. Check out our Instagram.
Yeah, but if you actually know or have you visited, please let us know. Actually, that would be amazing to know exactly how many nails you can find. There is also a film you can watch and different and how they did the excavation and how they do the preservation of the site today. How to get there? Well, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. It's in the northest tip closest to Greenland, so it's a little bit hard. Nevertheless, you can have the closest airport, which is San Antonio Airport, 1 hour and a half from car. So the easiest way to arrive to the place is actually by car. And but please always check out the times that the park is open, because as I mentioned, it's only open during the day. And that's it. Of course, there is also nearby attractions that you can also check. There are other UNESCO World Heritage Park sites, included the Red Bay National Historic Site close by, the Gros Morne National Park, and, oh my goodness, another name in French, Port au Choix and Hospital Mission National Historic Site. Maybe you will not understand, but you can find this information in the description of the video. That's it. I think that this Aux Meadows is a really specific and really nice place. I really would like to go one day and see the only place that is confirmed to have been visited by Vikings, at least visited. Again, until we have more information, that's not confirmed. They actually live for a longer period of time there, but yeah.
So first, thank you very much, Lina, for all this information and fun facts you shared. I am not sure when we will reach there, if we will even reach there, because I have the feeling a lot of the sites in Canada can sometimes be tricky to reach. I think
they are
country.
Really huge and really far apart. Even though I mentioned these 3 sites, most likely they are not as close.
Yeah. So, but if we manage to go there one time, it's very curious about what turns out. But no, thank you very much for explaining me and our audience about what we should know about Lonesome Meadow. I actually can give a bit of a spoiler that also in our next episode we will stay in Canada. We also will talk about something that is unique in its very own way. I mean, surprise, it's a World Heritage Site that we're talking about there, but that was a really cool episode. Thank you so much.
Yes, join us next time as we will explore another site in Canada, as Ral mentioned it. And yes, maybe thanks for listening. And
thank you very much.